Well, with that, I think I will call to order this meeting of the Citizens Advisory Committee of the Monroe County Solid Waste Management District on this third Thursday of December, the 16th, our last meeting of 2021. And since our Vice Chair, Randy Cox, will not be present this evening, will our Secretary, Andrew Manley, please call roll?
All right, John Arnold, Ryan Conway. I didn't hear you, Ryan, but I see you.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you now.
Nice.
Ronnie Cox, Lily Kleinlein.
Present.
Lauren Cott. Andrew Manley, here. Adelaide Petroff-Yu.
Present.
Nelson Schaefer. Paul White. Warning Wilder.
Here.
Joe Winnia.
Here.
6 present.
Thank you very much. Indeed. That's good news. Thank you everyone for joining. Quick special welcome to Adelaide, our new member. And I think we'll have a chance to talk a little bit more later in the meeting. And I think we'll just go ahead with the adoption of the agenda, which I will screen share for you now. So this agenda was distributed by email and uploaded to Dropbox on Tuesday, December 14th. Are there any objections to adopting it as distributed and shown? All right, seeing none, the agenda is adopted, and we will go ahead and go on to our first order of business, which is approval of meeting minutes. Those were distributed also, this is for the November 18th regular meeting, and were also distributed by email on Tuesday, December 14th. Are there any corrections? All right. Seeing none, those minutes are approved as distributed. So we can proceed to our next order of business, which are reports. Tom, if you would provide a report for the district, please.
You probably have more to report about the district than I do right now. Joe has somewhat at my request and definitely with my blessing taken the lead on reshaping the district's website. So I will let you talk about where that is and where that's going next, if you don't mind. That's probably the biggest news that we have. We're trying to wrap the year up and get all of our year-end reconciliations and reporting together, and then we'll jump back in and start to pick up with some of the goals and objectives of the new solid waste plan, tire recycle or the waste tire program is priority on that, and there is interest from some board members and some other community members on apartment recycling, and that's going to be a much bigger task to tackle than doing a waste tire program. But and the website upgrade, and then kind of following, piggybacking on that will be, looking at the branding of the district and what our message is and how it's getting out there, and ways to improve that. So that is, that's what's going on right now. It doesn't sound like a whole lot because year-end stuff kind of monopolizes everybody's time right now, and unfortunately with Mr. Morgan out of the office, it's putting some double duty on some of us to get that stuff completed. So
Tom, I have a question for you.
Yeah.
I heard that the wastewater plant's drop-off location had a compactor down the other day. Has that been fixed?
As far as I know, the issue started with the storms and power problems. Duke had a lot of outages Saturday, and that kind of seemed to coincide with when the problem started with that. And Monday, there seemed to be some issues off and on. We had some people out there Tuesday and they could not replicate the issues. Did not hear anything yesterday that there were any problems. So as far as I know, it's been corrected at this point in time.
That's great. Building on that, you were looking at potentially upgrading some of the compressors. Have you determined from legal yet if that would require bid plans or anything, or can you just find your own contractor as needed?
We're still looking at that because the current situation is a mess. It works for us, but as far as trying to make a change, it's a mess. We have we lease a total of 15 compactors, 14 of those from one company, and then one, which is the oldest one that we have, South Walnut, from a different company. But it's the 14 that we've been working with the current vendor on, doing some upgrades on. But those 14 compactors are covered by 13 different lease agreements that all have different renewal dates and start dates. And so to try and put all that out for bid in one shot is not real feasible to do, given that, you know, we have rental terms that end at different times. And if the you put something out for bid, you don't know what responses you'll get. And if our current vendor happens to not be the winning bidder, they're probably not going to want to let us out of those agreements, and they'll hold us financially responsible for the full term of that agreement if we choose to make a switch in the middle of it. So it's really turning into a headache, but we're trying to figure our way through it and find a solution.
Well, best of luck. It sounds like a mess.
Thank you for the report, Tom. Are there any other questions on it? All right, so we'll move on to the chair report. I want to cover first that we had CAC reappointments at the last board meeting. And I want to mention particularly to Morning that your reappointment was added to the roster by voice. So you are present for next year. And then we also did have a little bit of a change in membership with the end of Lauren Cott's membership, and then the addition of Adelaide's. So that's, I think, an exciting switch, and I look forward to the future with that. The second item is the website that Tom mentioned, and I guess in short, it's under construction and moving along steadily with a anticipated launch date of the end of the calendar year. So it's still looking possible and promising, I think, to deliver by that time. And it's been a really productive and positive experience with a lot of opportunities for feedback and input and guidance on how to best structure and present the information to make it the most accessible to residents of the district as possible. So I'll be very excited when that gets launched, and we'll be glad to discuss it and show it to everyone in January. And then the last item I have is the bylaws process that has been gone through since the last meeting. It's been a lengthy one, and it started with a presentation to the executive committee for an initial round of feedback. And then the question came up of the applicability of Monroe County Code Chapter 216, which regulates boards and commissions, because the district itself is a directly state-established entity. So we brought that then to a meeting with the district attorney, Lee Baker, who indicated a lean to removing references to Chapter 216, particularly anywhere that the state statute precedes it, so there's no conflict of priority or precedence. And then thirdly, it went to the full board, and Attorney Baker expressed a stronger interest in totally striking any reference to that chapter of code. So we did so, and then there was also a final round of suggestions presented by the board that will be taken up in our second new business item on the agenda. So that's rather lengthy, but are there any questions about the report? All right, seeing none, I'd also like to take the opportunity to give Adelaide the chance to say hello and mention anything if you want to, since you were included in the chair update items with the appointments.
Hello. Joe, thank you for the opportunity to introduce myself. My name's Adelaide. I moved to Bloomington about 2 years ago. I'm very interested in trash and waste and just how we process these things that we use that are then invisible to most people, but are so important to the balance of our environment, because it can get out of balance really quickly when we love consuming and packaging things so much. And so I'm very interested in just learning from you guys about what kinds of things make it to the agenda, what kinds of things you decide to do with those things that make it to the agenda. So I think, the approach that I'm envisioning is that I'll be kind of sitting back and listening for at least the first couple of meetings and just trying to hear what everyone has to say.
Welcome. We're glad to have you.
Thanks.
Indeed. Welcome, Adelaide, and thank you for that. So we can carry on to further business. We have no reports of special committees, special orders, or unfinished business or general orders. So we can proceed right to new business. The first item of which is not actually officially part of our bylaws yet, but seemed like a prudent thing to do, and that is to agree on our initial meeting time for 2022. Since we do have a slight change in membership, and just to be able to indicate to the district for scheduling and open door law purposes when we will be meeting, I just wanted to open up an opportunity to make any changes to or confirm our recurring meeting time.
I forgot to consult my class schedule. Trying to do that now, but I'll let you all know if there's a conflict.
Sure. And I will note that if we do stick with the third Thursday, that would be January 20th at 5:15. Are there, let's see. Is there, I guess, well, would there be any objection to maintaining the third Thursday at this point in time?
No objection from me.
All right. I'll note at 5:15 as well, since that's also pertinent. So, okay. We will, at this point then, plan on that meeting time and then provide that information to the district so it can be published. Thank you for that. The second item of business, of new business, is the adoption of Resolution 2021-02 on adopting new bylaws. And that was distributed in the packet and appears on page 2 with a reference to the entire bylaws as proposed on page 4. So I do want to take the opportunity to potentially review and confirm a couple of changes and recommendations from the full board. But I'd like to first open it up to see if there are any members who wish to voice any opinions about the current draft.
I hate to, I mean, I know that you haven't put enough time into this already, and just to nitpick, Lauren Cott will need to be removed from the signature page if it's not being adopted today, because this will be her last meeting as a member. If it's being adopted today, it's fine for her to be on there because she is a member through December 31st.
Duly noted, thank you. Are there any other thoughts to express from members? All right, if not, then I will transition to screen share and also share a link to the document where it resides now so that anyone can access it on their own device. Bear with me as I navigate the transition. So that's where the document is located in Dropbox. And then the share is on its way. All right, can anyone confirm that it's properly shared and visible for me?
Visible.
Perfect, thank you. So the points in particular that I wanted to be sure that the members are in agreement with that were brought up by board members are the duration of terms. I'm sorry, yes, the duration of terms is the first one. The county has staggered 2-year terms, and the district has 1-year terms expiring at the end of the calendar year. So I thought it worthwhile, since we were revising bylaws and since the board had expressed interest in knowing what our preferences are in terms of defining the operation, if there were any clear preferences on changing or maintaining the 1-year calendar year terms.
I'll just say, for me and if future students were to join up, I very well could be moving by the end of next year. So a 2-year may not be convenient for some students.
I would just, point out to that it, it's, I guess, if they made it 2 years, I mean, there would be, an expectation of a commitment, but, there is also a clause in the bylaws concerning resignation as well. So, it's, and obviously, everybody, not just students, jobs change, circumstances change, people lose time or move, and it would be something that could happen to anybody. So
Thanks for pointing that out.
Any other comments on the topic?
So it currently reads 1 year, and but it could read 2 years if we agreed that it could be 2 years, or
Essentially, we would forward our preference to the board of directors, because it is the resolution 90-01 that establishes the CAC that determines the terms of members. So if we wish for them to do otherwise, we would express so, and then it would still be at their discretion to change it. But the bylaws, our bylaws, will just reflect whatever the board's choice is. Does that make sense?
yeah, I'd be okay with either length term.
I guess my thought to start with a 2-year change to 2-year would be that, would we keep everyone who's currently on at the same interval, or would we try to space it so maybe half the people, we wouldn't all, for example, be like technically ending at the same year? Over time, I think it would probably even out, but just for stability's sake, I don't know about having everyone who comes now on the same exact, I guess we are now though, if it's 1 year, so maybe doesn't matter.
That's a good question. I think it could be resolved by having half of the membership potentially arbitrarily or voluntarily chosen serve one additional 1-year term, and then have the others do a 2-year term, so that we could essentially all continue for the next year, and one set of us be halfway through the term, so to speak. And then that would generate a staggered result without having to remove any members or do any complicated navigation.
At the end of each term, though, members would still be offered to remain on the committee, correct? It wouldn't be a mandatory exit after the term is finished.
That is correct. Of course, unless, I mean, again, up to the board's discretion, if they were to define terms as such in the resolution, then it would be as such. But I have the very distinct impression that they also do not want for that to happen.
Yeah, it would for the purposes of the board, it would operate much the same way that it does now. There would be an annual reappointment, but instead of the full membership, it would just be those members whose terms are due to expire and have expressed an interest to continue.
And I think it would be, well, first I'll offer the opportunity for any more comments if there are any. If there aren't, I think it would be worth formalizing in a motion just to make sure that we are in agreement on how we move forward with the decision.
Well, I think I think if you want, if you're interested in passing these bylaws tonight, then the language that's there is appropriate and what needs to be there, because that is the current policy by the resolution. And
Okay.
if the CEAC wishes to have the board consider, doing a longer term and trying to set that up so that they're staggered and stuff, then you make that known to them, and then if they act upon that, you just have to come amend the bylaws.
That is an excellent point. I appreciate that, Tom. Thank you. In that case, that is correct as stated, and then we can make that recommendation to the board in the future if we so choose, and can proceed to the second of the three recommendations or inquiries from the board, and that is the definition of, or the use of a 2/3 majority for a few different instances within the bylaws, and to ensure that it's 2/3 of the voting members present and not of the total membership. So the difference being that if it's the total membership and less than the total membership is present, you would have an even greater than 2/3 majority of those who are present in order to pass any motions that require a 2/3 majority. So I've worded everything as a 2/3 majority of the voting members present, so that whomever is present can make the decision in a 2/3 ratio independent of who is absent. So if there are any thoughts or objections to that, now would be a time to voice them.
Can I offer a comment and an opinion?
Please.
Given the history of attendance, by the committee as a whole, I'm leery to make a 2/3 requirement. And I guess, I know that you say members present, and I think, and I don't remember if it was at the board meeting or the executive committee meeting, or maybe even the meeting you and I had with Lee Baker. I made reference to the board bylaws, and they used the language present and acting. And maybe that's not as critical for this group, but the board oftentimes has members that will abstain from a vote for a particular reason. And in that case, we don't want, if they're abstaining, they're not acting, and we didn't, so our board and their bylaws didn't want that abstention to impede the progress of moving something forward. So,
yeah, that's a very good point. I was not familiar with the distinction between acting and not acting through abstention, which is why it wasn't incorporated. But I do remember that remark. And personally, I'm of the opinion that I would like to include the acting portion as well for the same reason, which I had not in this draft.
I have another question about section A. And maybe this is part of the potentially updated bylaws, but I thought I had read about missing 3 consecutive meetings and or 50% of meetings. I see that on part A, it says 2 consecutive meetings. So I'm not sure if I had read something that was old or if that was a new idea that hadn't yet been confirmed.
You are correct, and that is, let's see. Forgive me as I scroll through. Under attendance expectation. So this is the, I guess, CAC defined expectation of attendance. And this is the, I guess, taken from Monroe County Code Chapter 216, just as a reference for county policy, that this is how the board, how board of directors can operate within the county structure.
Okay.
And does that answer your question?
Yes.
Okay.
I would add to that you know, I think that the board, as a matter of course, is not going to track CAC attendance and, you know, meeting participation and stuff. And so, you know, what this in essence does is basically just set the parameters where the committee as a whole could recommend or request of the board that a member be removed because of Section 6A of the bylaw. You know, it gives you a reference to the board as, you know, here's the parameters that were set that are not being met, and we would like you to take action. So even, yeah, it does, the power rests with the board, but the CAC is going to have to bring to the board's attention that somebody's not meeting the expectations and that the committee wishes a change to be made.
It does seem like the action to be made is less than the expected behavior of members, right? Because the expectation is that you won't miss more than 3 consecutive meetings, but action could be taken after missing 2 consecutive meetings.
That's true. And I think if I may rebound to the 2/3 majority question first before taking this up, just to close that. Is there any objection to adding the language of, Tom, would you say it was present and acting?
On 6B?
Correct.
It would, yeah, with what's in there now, it would be 2/3 majority the voting doesn't need to be in there. It's a 2/3, I guess, 2/3 majority vote of the members present and acting.
Okay. And Mr. White, I see you have a hand up, but you are also still on mute.
Now, do you hear me?
Yes, you
All
are
right.
coming through. Please.
I still don't really understand that acting, non-acting thing that Tom was talking about.
So in short, if a member abstains from a vote, they would be counted as non-acting. So if 10 members are present and 6 of them, how do I, can I describe this accurately on the fly? I think, yeah.
That was a good start. If 10 members are pregnant, if 10 members are present,
I'm not pregnant.
You know, well, if 10 members are present, 6 vote in favor, 3 vote opposed, and 1 abstains, the motion would pass. That is a 2/3 majority of those present and acting.
I guess acting could be described as participating or not participating in voting.
It's voting or not voting, yeah.
Tom, is acting the legal term that best describes
that would be a question for Mr. Baker. That is the language that's used in the board's bylaws.
Okay, I'm only curious to know if then Morning's remark could be equally as valid and didn't want to just replace a more appropriate legal term if that was, but if it's not, then we can entertain that. And also, Paul, if you wouldn't mind muting again, I can hear a lot of feedback through. Thank you very much. So Morning, can you repeat your suggestion?
Oh, I was just trying to describe acting as participating or not participating in a vote.
Okay.
I guess I would, and when you use the word participation, then that makes me wonder and think about the, the changes that have been made to the open door law as a result of COVID, where if you're going to have the hybrid meetings, in order to be considered present and able to participate in a meeting electronically, you have to be seen and heard. And I'm just, I don't know. It just makes me wonder and think if those changes they've made to the open door law, and maybe even the board needs to relook at the language in its bylaws to make sure that if we're moving and moving forward with hybrid meetings, that we all have the right language in our bylaws to account for things that could occur.
Maybe a way to address that. I'm a little concerned that if there's 6 people there for a quorum, then 4 people can determine the fate of someone being removed, which really isn't representative of 2/3 majority of all members. Sort of how we get our resolution signatures. I'm wondering if 2/3 majority of all members, because I think everyone should have a say.
If I can present a counterpoint to that, I'm going to be abstaining from this upcoming vote on adopting the bylaws just because I don't have enough history with the organization. But at the same time, I was like counting the number of total members because I was worried that perhaps my abstention would then skew the vote unnecessarily and then not let you guys pass something that you do want to pass. And so I feel like as someone who's about to abstain, I would want my abstention to not necessarily inadvertently affect the vote, because then the abstention carries a lot of weight that it shouldn't, because that's what I'm trying to do by abstaining, is not influence the vote.
That is a good point, Adelaide. I will say, for the sake of this vote, because these aren't our bylaws yet, this language doesn't come into play, and it's also a 50% simple majority vote. So I don't think that will negatively impact our ability to pass. And to your point, Andrew, I think that is a good and interesting one, and will be important for us to decide as a body, because there's, definitely ramifications to the 2 options, doing it of the full membership or of just members present. Because you're right, if it's just members present, that can be a pretty small number. But if it's of the entire membership and there's routinely a shortage, then these things will potentially never be able to happen.
Joe, do you want, I can share my screen and I can show you, because the board actually in their bylaws, they have a table at the end of it that spells out different things that they might vote on and what the voting requirements are, whether it's a simple majority of the board or it's a majority of present and acting. Do you want me to share my screen and show that?
20 minutes at least.
I think that would be interesting. Do you have the capacity to already? Are you a meeting host?
Yeah, I do. I just gotta find the right screen.
I've ended my share. And in the meantime, if I may ask, Paul, you become unmuted again, and there's a lot of background sound.
So can you guys see addendum A, quorum and voting required?
Yes. It is up.
So, I mean, and obviously that first column you would have different, different items there, different matters that you would be discussing and voting on in some instances. But that way, that's rather than trying to address everywhere in the bylaws where votes are referenced, you just have we have the addendum back here that says, here's the voting requirements for, the various types of things that our board may vote on.
I like this table. Would we make a whole other, like personal matters? What sort of includes that? Would that be membership issues or?
No, that's personnel, employment decisions.
Oh, I read that as personal, not personnel. Thank you.
I mean, that hiring, firing, changing salaries, things like that.
I like the flexibility afforded by the nuance. I do think that allows us to capture more. I mean, it'll mean more work on the front end now, teasing out what things might be for what. But yeah, I like it as a policy tool.
Joe, have I never sent you the board's bylaws and this whole process?
You have actually, and
okay. This should be the last page of whatever document I sent you.
Okay. Yep. I don't think I read that page, and I'm embarrassed that for all the work that I've done, I managed to overlook this one part that comes up. I do
trust. It's easy to get bored reading all of these policies and procedures and never make it to the last page.
There are a lot of them. I will note that for the sake of the bylaws proposed, if you do a search, or I could reshare my screen, but if you do a search for 2/3 majority, it will indicate the, let's see, the cases for which a 2/3 majority are specified. So essentially, I think the table would just be a simplification and a more easy version of accessing all of that information. And I do like that concept, and we'll plan to go that route, I think, in perhaps a revision of the bylaws. But as it stands now, all of the information is still present in the proposed bylaws and easily summarizable with a search. So in this case, it's termination or removal of a member. It's removal of an officer. Let's see, changing the meeting schedule, dismissing a member from a meeting. So I guess, yeah, 3 ways of kicking someone out, either from the meeting, the membership, or their office. And then changing the bylaws or the meeting schedule. So the bylaws is the last one, a 2/3 majority. So just for reference, those are the items in the bylaws that require this over a simple majority. For motions, any other motion proposed in a meeting, it's a simple majority. So along the lines of your question, Andrew, and your answer, Tom, that it's for things that are more large-scale changes or removal of people. So I definitely see the interest in making sure that there's good representation for those decisions, but I would also hate to see those decisions not able to be made because of a shortage of attendance, which in the case of removing a member may be the motivation for the removal. So by being absent, they're essentially maintaining their ability to be absent, coincidentally.
That is an issue to balance, but in hindsight, I think that what you have here is fine. Or the best option.
Okay, yeah, I do want to make sure that we reach a consensus on this, or at least a majority opinion. Are there any other thoughts on changing the language from 2/3 majority of members present? And then is there anyone opposed to adding the "and acting" portion, or the as Tom mentioned, with the authority to vote, because essentially a member who normally has the right to vote could be not given the right if they haven't respected the electronic attendance policy. So if it's a third consecutive electronic attendance, they are a member, they normally can vote, but they can't in that meeting because they've exceeded the 2 consecutive electronic meeting requirement.
Joe, I think that you should there, after 2/3 majority, the word vote should be inserted, because I assume that the committee would make a vote there.
Okay.
And it particularly when you're talking about recommending removal, it should be a vote, not a consensus or, yeah, we all nod our head and it works,
Okay. I do agree with that, and that was the intent of the language. So it will be a 2/3 majority vote in all cases. And then, so there's no opposition to the and acting clause to indicate that they are neither abstaining nor forstricken of the right to vote. All right, hearing none.
But it seems to me that if you're abstaining, you're, what do you say? You're removing yourself just by abstention of any particular majority that's being required, whether it's simple or 2/3.
Well, I guess I'll jump in here, because that's we're taking that language is being borrowed from the board's the board of directors bylaws. And my recollection when we drafted those bylaws, that was actually language that came from the district's legal counsel at the time, and that acting meant that they were participating in the vote for the purposes of this that was taking place at that time. And if you abstain, you're not acting on that issue. So then, and I can't remember what exact potential scenarios came up where they thought that they needed to draw that distinction, but but in essence, if you need a simple majority of the board of the members present and acting, and there are 8 of them there, and one, or if there's 7 of them there, and one abstains, then that leaves you with 6, and it would still take 4 votes to be a majority of that 6. And again, I can't remember exactly what scenarios were being tossed about that that legal counsel felt that was the way we needed to word it. But yeah, in essence, it takes somebody that's not participating in a vote out of the count for what constitutes a majority or a 2/3 majority or something like that.
That seems logical to me.
That seems logical to me, so I don't have any problem with it.
All right. I'm just quickly reviewing the changes that have been incorporated to rephrase the language to a majority, 2/3 majority vote of members present and acting. Okay, they are all covered. I think that concludes this topic. One last opportunity in case anyone has a remark to make. Seeing none, the last recommendation from the board was to see if there, so the current proposed bylaws indicate a limitation of terms for holding an office. So essentially an office may only be held by the same member for 3 consecutive terms. And the interest was to encourage changing of positions and avoiding a de facto member in a particular role for an extended period of time. That seemed like a desirable quality to me, which is why it's included. And I want to make sure that what was pointed out by the board was just the possibility that if there are no other members interested in serving the role, then essentially it would be not possible for an officer to continue to serve without amending the bylaws. I'll open the floor to see if there are any thoughts on one approach versus the other, or questions about the merits of either.
Is 3 a common, like 3 years a common requirement for consecutive terms, or are there shorter or longer ones in your experience?
From the reading and referencing that I had done, I didn't have a framework for making the decision. This was based purely on an empirical reflection on 1-year terms, and then having 2 consecutive terms and the possibility for a third seemed reasonable. I mean, I'm not much of a politician, so I'm not very intimately familiar with term limits, but I am open to shorter or longer durations if membership feels that it would be valuable.
In my experience with the district board, the association board, and other bodies, I mean, for officers, 1 year is a pretty standard term.
That's how it is in the Monroe County Environmental Council. I think Dave Warren and Nolan Hinden have switched off a few times for being president each year. Offers a fresh perspective, but of course, Joe is great. We want him for a long time, so.
Well, there's nothing in here that says they can't be reelected again. I mean, they serve a term of 1 year, and I mean, generally every January, a new slate of officers is elected, but there's nothing that says it can't be the same slate of officers.
Yeah, I think it's fine as it is then.
Oh, I guess I missed it. I forgot we had the B1 in there. I mean, that's I don't think there's, from my experience with other bodies, that is totally what this committee wants to do. If you want to limit your officers to 3 terms, I think it's within your prerogative. You just better make sure that 2 years from now, when Joe can't do it again, you guys have somebody willing to step up.
Yeah, I was going to say, in general, people seem to kind of self-select themselves out when they're burnout or tired of doing it. And certainly I've sat in on different committees on sort of awkward votes, but in general, I think if someone is a long-term chair or vice chair or secretary, people are appreciative of that. So, I've been a secretary for years ago, for many, many years, more than 3 terms, and same with some other committees. And I know no one else wants to do it. So it can get a little tricky in that sense. It took me forever and almost like threatening to quit to be not secretary with this one.
Well, how about this? What if we could add, an office may only be held by the same member for 3 consecutive terms unless no successor is elected? I don't know.
I suppose,
I mean,
Lily,
your section A2 kind of says the same thing. I mean,
yeah.
even if it's the conclusion of somebody's 3rd term, you go back to A2, and if there's no election or nobody accepts a nomination, then that person by A2 is still that officer, that chair, that secretary, whatever the office is.
Yeah. No, I didn't connect the two. I didn't know if we should include that in the B part as well, but yeah, so that's perfect scenario for me then.
I'll add that the intent for A2 was derived from a Monroe County Code chapter 216 reference essentially that if there is no replacement, or if there is no ability to replace an officer due to like a meeting not being held or like a change of membership, then they'll continue to serve just to make sure that the role is fulfilled until a vote is held, more so than as a means to skirt the vote and not violate the bylaws. I guess that's my lack of legal watertight language. And I think, Lily, to your remark about having to threaten to quit to get out of a position seems like almost a case for keeping this, just so that no one could be held, to that point of people keep electing them. And for what it's worth, the elections process also indicates that a nomination must be accepted by the nominee. So you'll have the right to decline. I know there's also the different components to it, but at least within the context of the bylaws. So again, and I'm also completely open to and interested in what the body is interested in doing, because this seemed to me like a good idea to ensure that there's people changing roles and, cross activity and not just sort of a rooting and graining decade-long setup that gets fixed, but just to say time's up, someone else do this role. And then Tom, I'm really glad that you mentioned about finding a replacement, because that was one thing that Chairperson Munson of the Board of Directors mentioned, that she has seen cases of essentially a president-elect process where whoever is the vice chair becomes the chair, such that the vice chair will have been in that position for a year and have observed the responsibilities of the chair and then can move into that position, rather than having one person take it, run it for 3 years, and then have it dumped onto someone else who hasn't maybe been planning to do it. And also makes it clear if and when the current officer will be at the end of their term, and that there will need to be a replacement, rather than it being learned at the meeting where elections are taking place and no one's really quite ready to step into the position. So those are my thoughts on the motivation for this, but it is up to us to decide. And I do want to note that we are approaching 5 minutes to the end of our scheduled meeting time, with concluding items to take place. I think that this is important, and I would like to continue the discussion, but also want to be respectful of time, and would entertain motions to extend meetings if possible, or vote on the bylaws as they are if the interest is to complete the vote during today's meeting.
I move to extend the meeting by 15 minutes to accomplish this business.
I'd motion to extend by 15 minutes if everyone is in agreement.
Second. So there's a motion and a second to extend the meeting by 15 minutes. Will our secretary take a vote?
Let me get my little list here. John R. Oh, do I need to take the vote of those not here as well?
Negative, just those present.
Okay, Ryan Conway,
Yes.
Lily Kleinlein,
Yes.
Andrew Manley, yes. Adelaide,
Abstain.
oh, Sin, all right. Paul White,
No, because I'm gonna have to leave.
okay. Morning Wilder,
Yes.
did you say yes or here?
Yes.
Okay. Joe Winnia,
Yes.
all right, the ayes have it.
All right, thank you. The meeting will be extended by 15 minutes, but just a quick check on quorum. I don't see everyone's heads up. Will we be 5? With Paul's
Yes,
departure?
5,
Okay,
with 1 abstention and 1 no, so that's 5 out of 6.
No, if you will still have 6 members present if Paul is the only one who leaves.
right,
Oh,
okay,
yes.
perfect, thank you.
Sorry, I just got the things I gotta get done.
Of course.
It happens. Don't worry.
Yep.
All right, so to take back up the question of term limits, were there any other thoughts on adjusting the value currently in place in the proposed bylaws? All right, seeing none, we can keep it at this, and we always have the capacity to amend our bylaws in the future. And then the last thing I wanted to revisit was Morning's point about the disparity between member expectations and board's capacity to remove members. I do think it's interesting that there is a disparity, but at the same time, since it is the board's decision, Morning, do you have a proposal for what you think would be a more coherent way to structure it?
Not necessarily. It's just that the one that is more strict is the one that's actionable. Or maybe they could just be in line where the expectation is that you will not miss more than 2. Or it could just be as it is. And it seems like it would it'd have to be a pretty egregious missing of meetings to have action taken that quickly. So the likelihood that these 2 things would come into conflict, doesn't seem very likely. So it might not matter, but I was just noticing the difference between the 2.
I think that is an astute observation, and I do agree with your suggestion to make the expectation in line with the remark about board authority. And I do think it's reasonable for it to be 2 or more consecutive meetings and still maintain the 50% or more within a 6-month period. Because that could still handle the case of alternating absences. Any objections? All right. Seeing none, that I think enables us to come to a vote on the adoption, provided that we can adopt the updated version rather than the version that was distributed in the agenda. Tom, do you know of any legal precedents on that case?
Yeah, it's very simple. I guess I should have stopped you at the start of this, and there should have been a motion made on the resolution before we discussed the bylaws. And then at the end of the discussion, somebody would make a motion to amend the original motion and adopt the bylaws as revised in the discussion. But I think somebody can very simply make a motion on resolution 2021-02 to adopt the bylaws as revised per the discussion at this meeting, something to that effect.
Okay, I think we could still make that happen. And did we already lose Paul? So, all right. Well, I will entertain either such motion.
So moved.
I'm gonna point something out here to you. With Paul's absence and absent the bylaws being in effect, you technically have 11 members now because Lauren is still a member. And if Adelaide abstains, you're only going to have 5 affirmative votes.
Right.
In that case, I'm happy to accept the bylaws. I didn't see anything I opposed to in there.
Excellent. Thank you, Adelaide. And that was the nature of my inquiry about Paul's departure. But, so we have a motion. Is there a second?
I second.
All right, so there is a motion and a second to adopt the bylaws. Oh goodness. Actually, no, let me start that over. I want to find the resolution. There's a motion and a second to adopt resolution 2102 with the amendments made to the bylaws at this meeting's discussion. Is there any discussion on that motion?
Joe, I have the resolution if you want me to share my screen. I have it up right now.
Yes, you know what? I can actually do that as well. That would be a good idea. Or if you would like to, I will stop my share.
I've got it right here, so.
All right. So the resolution is 2021-02 to adopt bylaws. So since there is no discussion, I think we can call the question. If the secretary will please take a roll call vote.
Ryan Conway,
Yes.
Lily Kleinlein,
Yes.
Andrew Manley, yes. Adelaide Petroff, you.
Yes.
Paul White, oh, he's not here. Morning Wilder,
Yes.
Joe Winia,
Yes.
all ayes.
All right, the motion carries and the amended bylaws are adopted. Thank you, everyone. That is very exciting. I will add those to the Dropbox bylaws folder in a PDF form in their final version. And then that completes our second new item of business. Wait, second item in new business on the agenda, forgive me. And that brings us to the final item, which is the Indiana Recycling Coalition Conference feedback. So myself, Ronnie Cox, Ryan Conway, Morning Wilder attended the virtual meeting sessions of the Indiana Recycling Coalition 2021 virtual conference. And let's see, we have Ryan and Morning present. If either of you are interested in kicking us off, I will give the floor to you. If not, I will begin with my take, which is brief. And it looks like I will go ahead and start, and I will mention that we were provided a set of pre-recorded videos to be able to review. Three tickets. I think there was something around 10 videos. So I opted to review the Reducing Residential Food Waste, the State and Federal Policy Update, and the Circular Economy for the Circular City. Everything was kind of how everything goes for me for these things, and that was deeply troubling and disappointing with a few interesting takeaways. So I say deeply troubling because I am personally not a huge proponent of the power of recycling and believe there's a reason it is last in the list of the 3 R's, and that it is by itself insufficient for resolving the crises that we are facing, even though it's touted as the solution to many things. I do want to note, though, that some of the brighter spots were that, let's see, I learned a few facts that the EPA has set a 50% recycling achievement rate for the nation by 2030, and that Indiana has also set a statewide goal of reaching 50% recycled materials with no scheduled date, unfortunately. And also that the city of Indianapolis has established what they call the Thrive Indianapolis plan, and that the IRC representative who was hosting that session expressed that they want to go beyond recycling, and they verbalized that they agree that it's not enough. So that was good to hear the Recycling Coalition agree that there needs to be more than recycling done. And one important, or I guess interesting, appreciated takeaway that I had was a beautiful description of an individual manning sorting bins at an event with a grabber in hand and clear bags so everyone could see the contents of what was being discarded, with perfect signing above with pictures of all of the materials present, where someone walked up with a tray full of mixed materials, looked them in the eye, and dumped it all in one bin. And I just thought that represented very clearly what we're dealing with. And then there was also a lot of affirmation about the importance of education in all of this, from all parties, actually. All of the panelists iterated from numerous organizations numerous times the importance and the value of education, which is exactly what has been established through all of the meetings within the CAC for the last year. And it was really reassuring to hear. So I feel like we're on the right track in that respect, in making that our priority and recommending that to the district. So that was my summary of what I took away from the educational opportunity that was provided by the district. So quick thank you to Tom for that as well. Yes, please.
Just to interject, because you said something that brought to mind, you know, you talk about, you know, recycling is not enough, and that's not the answer. And I guess to that end, the Indiana Recycling Coalition within the past month or so has rebranded. They are now called Circular Indiana. And my understanding, you know, part of the rationale behind that is to the point that you made, that trying to be, you know, broader in focus, and understanding that it takes more than recycling, and they want to start gearing things toward the circular economy and trying to close the loop in the state of Indiana. And so to that end, they've rebranded, changed their approach a little bit, and trying to be a little more broad in scope.
That is very good to hear. Thank you for that addition, Tom. Ryan or Morning, did you have any input that you would like to add from your takeaways?
I haven't had the chance to watch the videos yet because it's been a very busy past couple months, but I anticipate watching them before the end of the year.
Got it. Thank you.
Morning. And I think the links that I have expire on December 31st. So if for some reason you aren't able to do it by then, let me know, and we'll see if we can't figure out a way to extend that for you.
Thank you.
Tom, I believe according to the terms of the registration, the videos are only specified as being available until the 31st. I think that's what the registration provides, is access through the end of the calendar year.
Right. That's why. And that if her schedule doesn't permit her to do it, it doesn't mean they disappear. They don't go poof. They're still out there somewhere.
Got it. And Ryan, did you have any thoughts?
I'm in a similar boat.
Got it. All right. Well, that wraps up our last item of new business. That brings us to public comment. I see there are no members of the public present, so we can proceed to the good of the order, which I will open up to anyone if they have a remark to make.
Well, I would just like to, again, thank Joe, and let all the rest of you know that, I mean, the effort that he's putting into this website and the time, the commitment that he's made, I can't express my appreciation enough. And it you know, it would not be moving near as fast as it is, and we would probably not have as good a product without his involvement.
Yes, thank you, Joe.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. I'm glad you're taking the reins on it.
Thanks so much, Joe.
Yeah, thank you all for those comments. And also I want to reciprocate that gratitude to you, Tom, for providing the support that you have, and for, yeah, making it possible, and for the information and everything that you've contributed as well. And
yes.
Also, as my other additional good of the order, I just want to appreciate everyone's participation on the CAC. It's been a good year. I think it's been a very informative one. We've had a lot of valuable discussions. I am very proud of the advising that we've been doing for the board and for the district. I think we've been very functional and a good team, and I want to say thank you all for participating in all of that. And without any other remarks, I will just remind everyone that our next meeting for next year will be Thursday, January 20th at 5:15 p.m. either in the Nat U Hill courtroom or room in the courthouse if that happens, or potentially virtually still. So I will let you know when providing the reminder and agenda when the time comes.
I imagine, based on the statements that the governor has made with what he expects of the legislature in order for him to rescind the emergency order, that is probably not going to happen before the end of the year, and he will extend it through the end of January till the legislature gets back in session and can take action on some of his requests.
All right. Thank you, Tom. So a very probable virtual meeting in January then. And thanks again to everyone. Happy holidays. Be safe, have fun, and I will see you all next year. If there's no objection,
Thanks, everybody.
if there's no objection, this meeting will adjourn.
Thank you.